We're talking today with Lawerence VanLaan, who goes by Mike. He's from Byron Center, Michigan. The interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Okay, Mike, start us off with some background on yourself, and to begin with, where and when were you born?
I was born in 1934 on 76th Street, Caledonia.
Okay, so Caledonia, Michigan.
Right.
All right. And did you grow up in that area?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, we were on a farm there.
All right. Now, born in 34, so you're born during the Depression. Did your family own the farm?
Yes.
Okay. And they managed to keep it through the 30s?
Yes, they did.
Okay. And what were you growing on the farm?
What were,
What were you growing on the farm?
well, I think we were, in general, we had wheat and corn and oats and,
Okay.
yeah, whatever it took to feed the cattle. We were basically a dairy farm.
Okay. All right. And now, you were still a kid when World War II started.
Right.
But do you remember hearing about Pearl Harbor?
Oh, sure. Very, very, yeah. Because my two oldest brothers both went in the military, right? Maybe 41 or 42, probably.
Right. Okay. So they were military age, and so they,
Yes,
they went.
right.
Okay. Now, did the war affect life at home? Do you
Oh,
remember
yeah.
anything?
Very much, sure. Besides the shortages that there were, and everybody doing everything that they could for the war effort, so to speak, I guess. And I think we never had shortages really on the farm. I mean, we had everything we needed.
Yeah.
But
Well, you would have gotten maybe a little bit more gas or whatever you needed to run the farm with.
well, we did not have a tractor. It was all done with horses at
Okay.
that time. So gas was not
Not a
real
pro-
high on the
Not a problem.
priority.
Okay. All right. So you're going to get through all of that. And of course, the war ends. You're only 11 years old. So now, did you finish high school?
I did.
When did you graduate?
1951.
Okay. Now, by that time, the Korean War has started.
Yes, I did.
All right. And were you paying much attention to that?
No, because I was 17 in March, and I graduated in May. So I had not even registered for the draft.
Okay.
But yet, I think I was the youngest in my class, and there were people that I graduated with. Some of those guys were getting drafted almost out of high school. So
Right. Okay. Now, what was it that led you to decide to enter the service?
Well, I think that would have been in probably December of 1951, when my brother, just older than I, he had a friend of his that was killed in Korea, and then of course I registered for the draft in, I guess, March of 1952. I would have been 18, and I think that's when the decision was made that, yeah, you better do something. So I ended up joining the reserves, Naval Reserve, right
Okay.
after that.
Now, why did you pick the Naval Reserve?
Well, my brother was in the Naval Reserve, and
Okay.
he encouraged me that that was the way to go.
All right. Now, when you first signed up, did you have to do a physical or take any tests?
Oh, no, we must have had a little physical here at the local armory, which is down in Monroe
Right.
at that time.
Okay.
And
But would that have been for just when you registered for the draft, or would that be for joining the reserve?
that would have been for joining the reserves.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, once you joined, did you start going to meetings right
Oh,
away?
sure. Yep. I think we had. I think they were every Monday night we had to go to a reserve meeting.
Okay. And what were you doing at those meetings?
Uh, well, that's a tough question. I probably just learning the Navy protocol, I
Okay.
guess, at that time,
Yeah.
which, yeah, and probably learning how to march,
Mm-hmm.
for instance. I mean, there was a lot of that at that time.
All right. Now, not too long after you joined the reserves, you decided to go on active duty.
I did sometime. I'm thinking I probably joined the reserves in June, and then sometime during the summer, because you had to take, I think you had to take a 2-week cruise,
Mm-hmm.
and the first one would have been just a boot camp at Great Lakes,
Right.
and so I did that, and then right after I was back from that, that's when I signed up for active duty.
Okay.
And then I left, I would think, November of 1952.
Okay. So, do you remember anything about that 2 weeks of boot camp when you first went to
No,
Great Lakes?
I don't. Nope.
Okay. Now, when you did decide to go to active duty, did you go back to Great Lakes and do a full boot camp?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So, what was that like?
Well, the first thing I remember, this is probably my first Thanksgiving away from home that I've ever missed, is standing around, not standing, but marching, or at least kept moving around a dumpster in one of the big areas at Great Lakes on a cold, snowy Thanksgiving afternoon, and thinking, why did I ever do this? But that was, yeah, that was part of it. So
All right. Now, what did you do in the training? What kind of training did you get?
well, it was, well, boot camp. It was just a bunch of the Navy. I use the word protocol, learning everything that there was to learn, I guess, or everything that you needed to know, whatever I thought you needed to know.
Okay. So that's like the vocabulary. You're not on a boat. You're on a ship.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay. And you learned how to march?
We learned how to march. We marched every place.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay. Did they do a lot of physical training?
Uh, yeah, quite a bit probably.
Okay.
Uh,
All right. Now, did they ever have you? Did they do like firefighting or put you in a?
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. We had some of that. Quite a bit of water training. I mean, obviously you had to be able to swim, and
Right.
whatever else, be able to survive different things.
Okay. And then, how did the instructors treat you?
I think I think pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah, most of them were World War II
Mm-hmm.
vets, and yeah, for the most part,
So they were fair?
sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, because sometimes you hear about ones who were particularly bad or
Yeah.
abusive or
No.
that kind of thing. Okay. And now, how did they enforce discipline?
Uh, there must have been some different ways. If you didn't pass a certain test or something, you probably had to go back that evening and redo it. Or for instance, I remember that with swimming, if you had to be able to swim a certain distance or something like that, and I think I was one of them that was not able to do that and had to go back that evening until you could do it. So
Okay. Okay. So that's really more trying to get everybody trained.
yes,
But did they do things like inspect your locker or how you made your bed or that kind of thing?
well, yes, yeah, they did that.
Okay. And if you didn't do it right, did they just make you do it over?
I would guess yes,
Okay.
probably.
All right. And about how long were you in boot camp?
Well, we were still there at Christmas time,
Right.
and we had just, it almost seemed like we were in our last week, and then they said if we could do a certain thing or get past, then anybody that wanted you could have your leave that you got after boot camp, you could have that during Christmas, and evidently we all passed because we had all got to go on leave, and then we still had a week of boot camp after we got back.
Okay. All right. So you're really probably about 8 weeks or something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay. Okay. Now, once you finish boot camp, now what do you do?
Well, yeah, different people went all different directions, and there was like a questionnaire or something, and I can remember the only thing I wrote on that was just go aboard ship, and when the orders came, I got hospital corps school at Great Lakes,
Okay.
and a big surprise to me at that time.
All right. Now, did you know at that time that Navy corpsmen might serve with the Marines?
Probably not.
Okay. Because I know that during Vietnam, there was a need for corpsmen because they needed
Yes.
them with the Marines.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if that's the case for sure with Korea, but
I'm sure it was because not very long into corps school that we knew that you had a good chance of being part of the, I think it was called Fleet Marine Corps or something like that
Right.
at that time.
right. Okay. All right. So at corps school, what did they train you? What did they teach you?
All kinds of things that I had never heard of. So a lot of biology and chemistry and a lot more than first aid, and it was pretty intensive.
Okay. And were they training you for hospital duty or for combat duty or?
I would say both.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So they were trying to prepare you for whatever you might wind up doing.
Yes.
Okay. Because sometimes corpsmen talk about their training and they say it was pretty much all just for going into a hospital or a clinic, and some of them trained with the Marines separately. I mean, they did different things. So, but in your case, they were teaching you pretty much everything.
I think that's pretty true, and I think the last couple weeks of that corps school is when it got a lot more specialized, and I know myself and quite a few others in that class, we were told that we probably would be going with the Fleet Marine Corps. That would be, and so that was mainly what that training was at that time.
All right. Now, how long did you spend in the corps school?
I don't know if that was 12 weeks
Might have been.
or or something like that. Yeah.
So if it's a full course, then
Yes.
that would make
Yeah,
sense.
yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, once you completed corps school, do they send you to a ship now, or you go
Well,
home, or?
yeah, yep. There again, the people that you were in school with, they went all over, and I think you had, your choice between East Coast and West Coast, based on where you finished
Mm-hmm.
in the class. And I wasn't at the top, and I wasn't at the bottom. I probably was at the middle, and I do remember specifically this one person. I can't remember his name, but he did ask me, because I must have been one ahead of him.
Mm-hmm.
He said, if there's only one East Coast ballot, or not
Billet.
ballot, or whatever they were called, please don't take it, because my family is on the East Coast. And so I remember when mine came, I said West Coast, and I ended up getting Great Lakes. So,
Okay. Okay. So your first duty station then was Great Lakes?
yes,
Okay.
yeah.
And what was your job there?
I worked in the hospital, did whatever you were told, everything from emptying bedpans to making beds, and just taking care of people. And the thing that I guess sticks in my mind is that most of those people in those hospital beds were all guys that had come back from Korea,
Mm-hmm.
and so they all had stories to tell, and or you'd ask them whatever happened. And yeah, and some were very, very sick, and some, yeah.
Okay. Were there Marines there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Marines, sailors.
Yeah.
Everything.
Probably not. I guess in the Navy there wouldn't have been too many wounded.
No, not really.
But they still could have been sick, or injured.
Yep.
On duty. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. And about how long did you spend at Great Lakes then? After corps school. Yeah.
Well, the truce was signed in June of '53,
Mm-hmm.
so I know I was there,
Okay.
because a lot of the prisoners that were released from Korea, some of them came to Great Lakes. So
Okay.
I think until probably October, November.
Okay. All right. So you're there several months. Now, did you work at all with the prisoners who came home, or did you see them?
Well, we didn't have a chance to spend time with
Okay.
the prisoners,
All right.
and I think they were probably in a different part of the hospital.
Okay. So you don't really know what condition they were in, or?
No, only from what you could see from the outside. Yeah.
Okay. Well, did they look like they were, thin or underfed, or?
Yes.
Okay.
All of the above.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Okay. All right. But now, but you're only there doing that for a few months then.
Right.
Right. Okay. And then where do you go next?
Well, then probably in about October, I got orders to go to San Diego and get on the ship, which was USS Brush, which was a destroyer.
Okay. Now, was it a World War II era destroyer?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes. Yep.
All right. So they were based in San Diego. How did you get out to San Diego?
I think we had choices. We could either go on our own way, or they would give us probably a train ticket or something.
Mm-hmm.
I know I ended up going by train.
Okay.
And I was on my own.
Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah, because at that point you wouldn't have troop trains because there's no big war
right.
going on.
Nope.
All right. So you get there. All right. And now what happened when you got to San Diego?
Well, I probably checked in at the shore patrol station, and well, the ship isn't there, but it'll be here. And after 2 days or 3 days, they all of a sudden said, nope, it's in dry dock in Mare Island, which was up by San Francisco or something.
Okay.
So how I got up there, I don't remember, but I presume that there
You
was
may have taken another
or
train.
something, yeah. So
All right. So you get up there. All right. And once you get up there, do you go into a barracks or on the ship or?
well, the ship being in dry dock, and so the whole crew was staying in a barracks. But I think I was only in that barracks 2 nights, and then we went aboard ship, and right shortly after that, we left and went on a cruise through. I remember going under the Golden Gate Bridge and something on a,
All right.
hopefully to get you seasick or something, I guess.
Okay. Well, I don't know. Had you ever gone out on Lake Michigan before or anything like that?
No.
Okay. So
No.
this really is your first time being kind of out on the open water.
Oh, I think so, yes.
All right. Now they tell me that when you leave San Francisco, there's often pretty heavy swells or big waves out there.
That's true.
Okay. And a lot of guys get seasick right there. Now, did that happen to you?
No, it did not. But there was would have been my boss, the chief petty officer, who was a corpsman, and he had just met me maybe a couple of days before that, and all he said to me is, do not eat food. I don't know, maybe he got me something else, and don't pay attention to the people that are hanging over the rail and all stuff like that. And somehow I survived, and yes, it was very, very, it was choppy, or way more than that, yeah.
All right. And so but once you get past the harbor, you get past the rolling waves, it probably gets at least a little better there. Where did you go to, where did you sail to first?
Well, I think we went to Hawaii, to Honolulu, I would say, and we spent maybe a couple of days there. And after that, I don't know what sequence. I know we were in Guam, and I know we were in the Philippines. I can't remember what bay is in the Philippines.
Subic Bay, probably.
Yeah, and a friend that I went to school with, or neighbor kid, he was in the Seabees, and he was stationed there. So I do remember looking him up. So we must have been there for a day or two. I don't know, but and many of those little islands, and I don't even remember all of them.
Okay. So you're kind of touring around a lot of the different places where the Americans had bases, but you're also visiting foreign countries too. So basically you're just on a long extended cruise around the Pacific? Are you just cruising the Pacific at this point?
Yes.
And just stopping in different ports?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Now, did your ship always sail by itself, or did you join a fleet?
No, we were in a division. There were 4 destroyers, and there might have been a bigger ship, a cruiser, and we were with aircraft carriers part of the time.
Okay. And what, did you have any sense of what the purpose of the voyage was?
No, because the Korean truce had, was pretty new, and nobody really knew at that time if it was going to hold or be true. So, I mean, we were doing a lot of maneuvers, maybe a word I'll use. I know that we shot our guns many times, and went through all the practice stuff that there was. Yeah.
Okay. So when you are doing those practices and things, where were you on the ship and what was your job?
I was a corpsman,
Right.
so I was in the sick bay,
Mm-hmm.
and that's basically where I was.
Okay.
And I was right midships, so.
Okay. And so from there, were you in the interior of the ship so you couldn't see outside?
Oh no, I could see outside.
Okay.
Sure.
So there were portholes or
Well,
something you could
yeah.
look out of?
Well, I could go right out on the deck.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you could walk out on deck
Yep.
and go out there. Yeah. All right. And what kind of quarters did you have? I mean, where did you sleep? How much space did you have?
I actually slept in the same compartment that the cooks slept in.
Okay.
So we probably never had an inspection because some of them slept at night, some slept at day, and so nobody, I don't think, ever came down there, and it was good.
Okay. And did you get along with the cooks?
I did very, very well.
Okay. Now, sometimes in the Navy, they had black sailors as cooks, and then later they were sometimes using Filipinos. Now, were the cooks on your ship, were they white or were they black or?
All of the above.
Okay.
Yep.
So they were all mixed together at that point.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And were there, if you're friends with the cooks, did you get better food?
Yes. We did. Yeah. And yeah. And I could probably go in the galley anytime I wanted to and get coffee or whatever. And
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Now, while you were, and then, so you reported to a chief petty officer. So your boss was a chief petty officer. And was he pretty much the one who told you what to do?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So did you deal much with officers?
No, I just the ones that maybe they'd come in and want some like an aspirin tablet,
Okay.
when they were called
Right.
APCs or something at that time.
And did you have a doctor on the ship?
No, negative, did
Okay.
not.
Okay, you were too small to have your own doctor.
Right. Right.
Okay. Now, while you were on the ship, did anybody get badly hurt or seriously ill?
Yeah, we had a couple of times. One of the would have been the sailor on one of the gun mounts, and I don't remember how this all worked, but there were somehow some kind of gears that when they trained those guns different places, and whether he got caught in that in any way. I know that somebody came and got me, and I had to go out there, and his arm and hand were pretty well mangled, and we were just leaving. I'm almost thinking Guam, but I'm not sure. And I do know that I said to somebody that he has to be taken off the ship, so
Yeah.
he can't leave the port, and that probably almost got me in trouble because I made that decision on my own, and but it was true, and
Okay.
we did stop leaving the harbor, and they got him off the ship, and he did return to the ship while I
Okay.
was still on it.
All right. So he didn't lose his arm.
No.
Okay.
And then we did have another incident where somebody working in the gallery and in the galley, I'm saying, and we made, not we, but the cooks made our own bread, and some of these loaves came out, and there was a slicer that I remember they turned with a crank and pushed that bread through, and somehow this guy, his arm got sliced very bad. And there again, between me and then I know my chief was there, and we were at sea, and you know, so we needed a doctor, and there was a doctor on one of the other destroyers. But
Okay.
to get that doctor from that destroyer to our ship, and it was all done with a high line, and I know it was, yeah. Eventually, the doctor got on the ship,
Yeah.
and he stayed on our ship until we got to a port. He did not want to go back over that high line.
All right. Now, did you go to Japan?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you get to go ashore in Japan?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Many times.
Okay.
Yep.
And was there a particular base that you usually went to, or?
Yokosuka, I
Yokosuka, yeah.
think, in
Yeah.
Sasebo, and yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
several different places.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
And what impression did you have of Japan or the Japanese?
Well, they were a people that had been beaten
Mm-hmm.
from the war and probably in a recovery stage.
Yeah. Did you see any evidence of war damage, or was the war damage cleaned up?
Yeah, I think most of that was cleaned up at that time.
Okay. And how did the people treat you?
Good if you were willing to spend your money.
Yes.
Remember
Okay.
that.
All right. So they were polite most of the time?
I think so.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Now, did you do any traveling around in Japan, or just go ashore and stay in the ports?
No, never. No. Usually, I know one of the things that I did is I bought dishes
Mm-hmm.
which was my girlfriend at the time, who later was my wife, but and then they were bought there, and they got sent home.
Right.
In everything. I mean,
Yeah.
they were still
Yeah.
around. I mean,
A lot of guys did that. Yeah.
yeah.
That was one thing you could do there. Okay. Now, a lot of times when sailors go ashore in different places, they go drinking, they chase women, they do all sorts of stuff. Now, were you well behaved?
I would say yes. Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Now, would they, because you're a corpsman, and so sometimes people would be assigned to shore patrol duties. But you didn't do that.
I never had. Nope.
Okay.
I think as a corpsman, that was automatic. That you didn't do that.
Okay. Now, did people sometimes come back to the ship drunk or
Many times.
Okay.
Yes. Yep. The next morning was always a big line outside the door.
Okay. And did some of them get in fights? Did they ever get in fights, do you think?
Sure.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So they were doing the usual stuff that sailors
Yes,
do
right.
in those places. Okay. So you saw that. All right. Now, did you go to Korea?
Yes. Yep. In the harbor, and I really don't know where,
Okay.
but enough that just from the ship that you could see a lot of the damage
Mm-hmm.
to the country.
Okay. So you may have gone to Incheon, because that was near Seoul. Because Busan is in the south, and the North Koreans never got there.
Yeah.
You don't
Maybe
know.
we were in Incheon.
Okay.
I really don't know.
Okay. All right. Well, but that was a place where you could still see signs that there had been a war there.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah.
All right. And did you? But you just stayed close to the ship. You didn't go to Seoul or anything like that.
It almost seems like there was some of our people that did
Mm-hmm.
go ashore for a specific reason.
Right.
I don't know what the reason would have been.
Okay.
But
All right. But you stayed with the ship.
yeah,
All right. Okay. Now, did you also go to Taiwan?
sure. Yeah, we did. Which was Formosa at
Right.
that time. Yeah, and there used to be a thing called Formosa Patrol, where we just go around the whole island very, very slow, and it was about the most boring thing that you've ever
Okay.
heard of. But
Because there were still worries that the Chinese might attack. 'Cause,
yeah, yes,
which we're still worrying about all these years later. You know, so
Yeah.
70 years later, we're
yeah,
still thinking
right,
about that.
right,
Yep.
right.
Okay. And did you go ashore on Formosa?
Well, I think so. Sure. Yep. In fact, I think at some point after we had, I don't know how long that short or that Formosa patrol took, but it must have been a whole week or something. And we went ashore, and the officers or the captain or whatever, and let whoever didn't have duty go swimming or something like that, which was something really different. But we did that. Yeah. So
All right. And I mean, could you go into the towns or
I
anything
don't
like
think
that?
so.
Okay.
Nope. Mm-mm.
All right. So that's off limits. So that was different from Japan.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah. Entirely.
Okay. Now, about how long did you spend on that cruise? Was that a year-long cruise, or?
What on
Well,
board?
well, you were on the Brush. I mean, how long was the whole?
Well, I was on that whole year,
Mhm.
or not a whole year, but I think I got off in probably October.
Okay. So you had pretty much close to a year assigned to that ship.
Yep.
Okay. And you were at sea pretty much the whole time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Now, when you think about the time you spent on that ship, are there particular events or things that happened that stand out in your memory?
Probably one, as much as anything. We were supposedly going, I'm thinking Okinawa. We were going to Okinawa next, and I think the captain, but maybe some other officer, knew that my time was going to be up and that I wanted to go off the ship. And one of them had said to me, "If you stay on, we probably are going to be back to the States by Christmas or something like that." And I said, "No, I want it off." And so I think the plan is that we were going to go to Okinawa, and then I was going to get off, and there were myself and maybe one or two other people. And then instead of going whatever direction, the following morning we were headed in the sun was on the wrong side of the ship, and we were going the other way. And we actually went into a harbor it was called Indochina at that time, which is now Vietnam.
Right.
And we probably didn't know what was going on, but at that time, that's when the French were evacuating their people. So we saw some of this, and it realistically was the beginning of the Vietnam War. And then after we left there, we did go to, I'm almost sure, Okinawa, and that's where I got off the ship.
Okay. Now, you're supposed to get discharged, but you're on Okinawa. How did you get back to the States from Okinawa?
Well, we had to fly from Okinawa to, I think we went to Kobe, Japan. And then there I think that there was a medical convoy or something was going to go to Yokosuka from there, or Yokohama, whichever one, and they were if you were corpsman, you could go with them. Well,
Okay.
I looked at that as a way, because I knew I needed to get there, and but I think that ended up taking about 2 days to make that. By the time I got there, the other people had got off the ship where they were already there. And anyway, but then yeah, we actually were myself and one other person from the ship. We were on that wherever we were, Yokosuka or Yokohama, I don't remember which one, but we were there for about a week, and you had to check in every day to see if your number was up or your whatever. And eventually it was, and we didn't fly back, and we came back on a troop ship, which only 2 sailors, a bunch, hundreds and hundreds of soldiers that were coming back. But,
okay. Now, because you were a sailor, did you get to sleep separately from the soldiers?
We were, when we went aboard, they just told us we go find a bunk, you know, way down in the lower levels, and we both looked at each other and said, no, we can do better than this. So he was a quartermaster, which had something to do with the bridge, and I think he went that direction, and I went to sick bay, and that's where we stayed in the back.
Okay. All right. Now, during this year when you're at sea, did you ever wind up in a typhoon or a really bad storm?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. At least once.
Okay. And what was that like?
Well, it was. You'd see. I think you'd see what seems like 2/3 of the ship was underwater, and then eventually you'd come back out. But yes, yeah.
Now, was that scary? Did you think you were just going to sink?
It probably was, but yet there was absolutely nothing that I could do about it. It was certainly up to the people that were running the ship, and that's, you just had enough faith and trust that that it was going to be okay.
All right. Well, did the experienced people seem to think this was just normal? I mean, did they go about their business?
Yeah, because most of the people had been on that ship. Yeah, there weren't very many of us that were on, the first time, first cruise.
Okay. Yeah, so that helps. If they're not worried, then maybe you don't have to be.
Right.
Okay. All right. So now, when you went back to the States, where did you land?
Seattle.
Okay.
Yeah. And
then
that's we were processed, and
okay.
yeah.
So how did you get home?
I took my money and started buying plane tickets, I guess, and I think we flew out of Seattle to maybe Portland, and I think maybe Kansas City or something, and then Chicago, and eventually, Grand Rapids.
Okay. All right. And so now, once you get back home, you're discharged from the Navy. What do you do after that?
Well, I knew I wasn't going to farm because one of my older brothers had taken over that part, and that was fine with me. I had my girlfriend was there, and we were planning on getting married. I don't really know. We didn't have a specific date or anything, but I guess we were looking at June of the following year. And I knew I had to find a job, and I did some different stuff. I remember working, I don't know, sanding a truck, somebody had a truck repair thing, and I knew I didn't want to do that. And there was the old, called the County Poor Farm, which is got to be Maple Grove facilities on 32nd Street, and that I had an aunt that was must have been the head nurse or something there, and she thought it would be ideal that I could work in there at night as just in kind of in the men's ward, and
right.
so I did that a couple nights, and I knew that wasn't going to work very good either, and because at that time, you know, I was 20 years old and I sure didn't need any sleep. You know?
Yeah.
And then somehow somebody knew, you know, from somebody that knew somebody that there was a septic tank company that they were installing septic tanks, and they're making septic tanks, and they needed help, and so I started working for them, and I worked for them probably until we got married in December, the middle of December, and so I worked till shortly before that, and then you know, the weather got cold and stuff like that.
And then what did you wind up with as a career? In the long term, what work did you do?
Well, I know after the Christmas holidays, and I was married by then, somehow I heard, or somebody told me about a job with one of the tile companies, and so I went to work there, and that pretty well became my career. And then at some point, my brother had VanLaan Concrete, and so I ended up working there for 20 years, 22 years or something in there. And then when I left there, I went back and did floor covering and stuff.
Okay. All right. Of course, you're working in a period when there was a lot of building going on,
Yes,
and new houses getting built, and commercial places and so forth. So yeah, plenty of work for people who know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Which is still true now.
Yeah, very true. Yeah.
Okay.
There was a pretty down time in there, and that had to be in the early 80s.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Now, when you look back at the time that you spent in the Navy, how do you think that affected you, or what did you learn from it?
Well, I'll use the term maturing maybe, or growing up, or, you know, when I left I was kind of a dumb farm kid, is what it amounts to, and had not seen much of anything, part of life, and it was very eye-opening.
All right. Okay. Well, it makes for an unusual story, so I'd just like to thank you for taking the time for sharing it today.
Happy to do it.